Back then, I followed trends. I followed the noise, the movements, the fleeting rhythms of what everyone else was doing. Not because I truly believed in it, but because I feared being left behind. I thought progress meant keeping pace with the world, not realizing that I was losing my own pace in the process. The crowd was loud, and I mistook its volume for truth. The world told me what mattered, and I accepted it without question. I wore identities like fashion, temporary, replaceable, disposable. We live in an age where belonging is currency, where validation is oxygen, where we're taught that visibility equals value. You scroll, you imitate, you repeat. You chase the next thing, not because you need it, but because you fear disappearing without it. It's an addiction to relevance, a hunger to be seen in a world where everyone is performing their worth. But here's the truth that hurts before it heals. Following the world too closely blinds you to your own direction. When every decision you make depends on what others are doing, you become a shadow in someone else's story. You may move fast, but you move without depth. You may be seen, but you are not known, not even to yourself. There's an ancient saying, asterisk, he who trims himself to suit everyone will soon whittle himself away. Asterisk, that's what following trends does to the soul. It carves away authenticity, piece by piece, until all that remains is imitation. The pain of that realization is quiet but heavy. You start to sense that what you're doing, what you're chasing, doesn't feed you anymore. The applause feels hollow. The recognition fades faster than the energy it took to get it. You start to feel the dissonance between who you are and who you pretend to be, between what you post and what you live, between what you say you believe and what you actually practice. And that's the real exhaustion, not the hustle, not the effort, but the weight of living misaligned with your truth. So, what does this have to do with building change? Everything. Because before you can build anything real, you must face what's false. You have to confront the part of you that seeks validation from noise instead of value from silence. You must admit, I have been following, not leading. That admission is the first form of strength. It's not weakness to realize you've been lost, it's courage to say it out loud. This world doesn't need more followers. It needs builders. And builders are born the moment you stop chasing what's trending and start listening to what's true. But to reach that place, you have to endure the discomfort of separation. You have to be willing to walk alone for a while, to let go of the rhythm that everyone else moves to, and find your own. When you begin to detach from trends, you'll feel it like withdrawal. The silence feels heavy. The stillness feels empty. You'll question your direction, your worth, your pace. But remember this, solitude is not the absence of progress, it's the birthplace of it. Every great transformation began in isolation, when a person decided to stop repeating and start reflecting. In that quiet space, you start to hear your own voice again. It's shaky at first, uncertain, but it's yours. And that's enough. Because the first step to building change is not invention, it's alignment. You align with what's real inside you, with principles that don't expire, with truths that don't trend. So here's the exercise, simple but profound. Observe what you follow. Look at your habits, your media, your influences. Ask yourself, asterisk, does this make me stronger, or does it make me softer? Does this feed my purpose, or feed my distraction? Asterisk, then, slowly, remove one influence that doesn't serve your growth. Replace it with silence, reflection, or creation. You'll notice something powerful. Clarity begins to return. It's not that the noise disappears, it's that it loses authority over you. The opinions, the comparisons, the social pressures, they stop dictating your direction. And in that stillness, something stirs. A sense of authorship. You begin to wonder, asterisk, what if I built instead of followed? What if I led instead of chased? Asterisk, that's the seed of change. Not in grand revolutions, but in quiet realizations. The moment you stop asking, what's trending, and start asking, what's true? That's when transformation begins. Following trends may give you movement, but it won't give you meaning. Because movement without direction is chaos. And in chaos, we lose ourselves. So let me tell you this, the world doesn't reward followers for long. It forgets them as quickly as it praises them. But the world remembers builders, the ones who created something from conviction, not convenience. The ones who stood still while everyone else ran in circles. The ones who chose truth over trends. Back then, I followed trends. Now, I build change. And that shift didn't happen overnight. It began with one decision: to stop moving with the noise and start moving with intention. Reflect on that. Because this is where the real journey begins, when the noise fades and you're left with your own heartbeat, your own voice, your own vision. That's not the end of following. That's the beginning of becoming. And in that beginning, you'll find what you've been searching for all along: direction, purpose, and peace. Next comes the silence. The moment after the noise fades, when you start to feel the emptiness of imitation. That's where awakening begins. Then comes the silence after the noise, the unsettling stillness that follows imitation. It's not peace at first. It's emptiness. You've stopped running with the crowd, but you haven't yet found your own rhythm. You've disconnected from what's fake, but you haven't yet discovered what's real. And in that gap, that strange, lonely gap, most people turn back. Because silence feels heavier than noise. This is the desert between imitation and identity. The place where you start to question everything you once called progress. You begin to see how much of your life was built on reaction. Reacting to trends, to people, to opinions, to fear. You thought you were moving forward, but really, you were being pulled by algorithms, by validation, by invisible forces that profit from your attention. You were living on borrowed energy. But when the noise fades, you meet yourself, raw, unfiltered, unmasked. And it's uncomfortable. You realize how rarely you've been alone without reaching for distraction. You see how deeply your self-worth depended on being seen. And the question creeps in, asterisk, who am I without all of that? Who am I without the world script? Asterisk, this is the crucible of self-awareness, where imitation dies and individuality is born. It's not a beautiful process. It's awkward, uncertain, even painful. You'll feel lost, unproductive, invisible. You'll want to go back to the comfort of relevance. But if you can resist that urge, if you can stand still long enough to feel that emptiness instead of escaping it, something begins to shift. The silence becomes a mirror. It starts to reflect the truth you've ignored. There's a verse from the Stoics that says, asterisk, if you wish to be unshaken, first learn to stand still. Asterisk, that's what this stage demands. Stillness. Not as inactivity, but as inquiry. You start asking, what do I actually value? What kind of life feels honest to me? What kind of person do I respect when no one is watching? These are not questions of productivity. They are questions of identity. You start noticing how many of your ambitions were inherited, not chosen. How many of your goals were designed by others, not aligned with you. You begin to untangle the web of expectations that's been wrapped around your decisions. It's not rebellion for the sake of pride, it's clarity for the sake of truth. And here's the paradox. The silence that once felt like emptiness becomes fertile ground. You start hearing whispers of your own thoughts again. Small, fragile, but real. They're not as loud as the trends, but they carry more weight. These whispers are your instincts, your inner compass, your authentic desires resurfacing after years of suppression. Modern life fears silence because silence doesn't consume. It creates. It exposes. It makes you face what's unresolved. But it's also where ideas are born, where creativity flourishes, where conviction grows. Innovation doesn't happen in the noise of conformity. It happens in the quiet rebellion of solitude. If you want to rebuild your life on something real, you must learn to dwell in silence without labeling it as lost. You're not lost, you're detoxing from imitation. The confusion you feel is not failure, it's the body's response to freedom. You've left the comfort of the herd, and now your mind is searching for its own direction. So, here's a simple principle for this stage. Choose stillness before strategy. Don't rush to fill the silence with plans or productivity. Instead, sit with the discomfort. Journal your thoughts. Walk without your phone. Reflect on what genuinely moves you, what truly drains you. When you remove the constant noise, the truth doesn't need to shout, it becomes obvious. You'll begin to notice moments of clarity. Tiny sparks of, "this feels right." Follow them, not impulsively, but intentionally. Each spark is a breadcrumb leading you back to authenticity. Slowly, you'll realize that clarity doesn't come from chasing, it comes from listening. That's how awakening begins, not with thunder, but with quiet recognition. You start to see that following trends was never really about growth. It was about escape. Escape from uncertainty, from stillness, from self-confrontation. But now, in silence, you're learning the opposite: to face uncertainty, to dwell in stillness, to meet yourself fully. And that meeting is sacred. Because when you finally sit alone and find that you're enough, not because of who's watching, not because of what's trending, but because you're grounded in your own truth, that's when real strength begins to grow. This strength isn't loud. It doesn't need validation. It's a quiet confidence that says, "I know where I stand, even if no one stands with me." And that kind of strength, inner, disciplined, rooted, is the foundation of all creation. You can't build change from confusion. You can't lead from imitation. You must lead from stillness, from clarity, from peace with who you are becoming. So don't fear the silence. It's not the end of relevance, it's the beginning of resonance. The stillness that once felt empty is actually the soil of rebirth. Back then, you followed trends because you feared being unseen. But now, in the quiet, you're discovering something far more powerful: the ability to see yourself clearly. And when that vision sharpens, when you begin to feel your own strength, that's when discomfort transforms into awakening. That's where the real story of independence begins. Awakening rarely arrives with comfort. It's not the soft light of dawn, it's the harsh glare of truth breaking through the fog of illusion. When you stop following the world and begin listening to yourself, it feels like stepping out of a dream. You realize how much of your life has been spent chasing approval, and how little time you've spent asking, "Is this mine to chase?" Discomfort becomes the teacher now. The silence from before starts turning into confrontation, not with others, but with yourself. You start to see how you've built habits of conformity, how you've avoided the discomfort of difference, how you've mistaken adaptation for growth. You start recognizing the subtle forms of surrender: when you said yes out of fear, when you agreed to fit in, when you accepted standards that never matched your soul. And in that realization, you feel something ancient stirring: the human instinct for freedom. The will to think, to choose, to build. It's not arrogance. It's awakening. The kind of awakening that feels like rebellion because you've spent so long asleep. You realize that most people don't actually want truth, they want comfort. They don't want to think, they want to follow. And you used to be one of them. But there's no going back now. Because once you've seen your own dependency on external direction, you can't unsee it. The chains become visible. The dependence becomes painful. And the idea of living unthinkingly, unbearable. Here's what you begin to understand. Real growth isn't about keeping up with change, it's about creating from within it. The world will always shift. The trends will always evolve. But truth doesn't. And when you start aligning your life with truth, instead of novelty, you stop feeling like you're falling behind. You start feeling anchored, not because the world slowed down, but because you stopped running. There's an old teaching from Seneca, asterisk, "No man is free who is a slave to his passions." Asterisk, in our age, it might sound like this: no one is free who is enslaved to trends. The moment you need external validation to act, you've already surrendered your power. Freedom begins the day you no longer need to be told who to be. Awakening means recognizing that solitude isn't punishment, it's purification. You start to detach not only from the crowd, but from the parts of yourself that depended on the crowd. You let go of the false metrics, the likes, the comparisons, the borrowed definitions of success. And what replaces them isn't immediate joy. It's space, space for truth to grow, for conviction to form. That's the painful paradox of awakening. It feels like loss before it feels like gain. You lose illusions, identities, people who only recognized your mask. But underneath that loss lies something priceless. Yourself, unfiltered, unedited, unafraid. And here's where wisdom enters. You realize that following trends was never really about curiosity. It was about belonging. But real belonging doesn't come from imitation. It comes from contribution. You don't belong by matching others. You belong by offering what only you can. The moment you start creating, building, giving from your authentic core, you no longer chase belonging, you become it. That shift, from follower to builder, is the essence of awakening. It's when pain turns into purpose. You stop seeing struggle as a sign of failure, and start seeing it as the refining fire of authenticity. Because everything real is forged in discomfort, discipline, wisdom, creativity, conviction. In modern life, this awakening might look like turning off the noise for a while, saying no to distractions that don't align, refusing to chase what's popular just to feel relevant. It's not isolation, it's refinement. It's saying, I choose depth over dopamine. I choose purpose over popularity. So here's the principle for this part. Embrace discomfort as the doorway to clarity. Every time you resist the urge to follow the crowd, you strengthen your inner voice. Every time you choose patience over performance, you deepen your roots. The pain of detachment is temporary. The peace of authenticity is permanent. This isn't about pride or superiority. It's about responsibility. If you've been blessed with awareness, even just the faint awareness that you've been living on autopilot, then you have a responsibility to live consciously now. To stop consuming what dulls you and start creating what defines you. To stop echoing the world and start speaking from truth. Because awakening isn't a destination. It's a discipline, the ongoing practice of choosing truth over comfort, silence over noise, meaning over momentum. Every single day. And the world needs that discipline now more than ever. We're drowning in information but starving for wisdom. We're connected by technology but divided by imitation. The builders of change aren't the ones who scream the loudest. They're the ones who stay rooted in clarity while everyone else chases chaos. So let discomfort do its work. Let solitude sharpen you. Let truth make you uncomfortable. Because that discomfort, that ache of self-awareness, is the sign that you're shedding everything that no longer serves who you're meant to become. Back then, you followed trends. You sought the comfort of the crowd. Now, you stand at the edge of awakening, where the silence of solitude becomes the forge of strength. And in that forge, the heat of discomfort will shape you, until you emerge no longer a follower, but a builder. No longer an imitator, but an origin. No longer afraid of change, but capable of creating it. That's where the truth begins to reveal itself, not in imitation, but in alignment. And that truth is where freedom starts. Truth reveals itself in solitude, not in the noise of ambition, not in the applause of others, but in the quiet, where your motives are exposed and your values stand naked before you. There, stripped of pretense, you begin to see what was always real. The truth is simple, but simplicity terrifies the modern mind. Because when there's no one left to impress, you must confront what you've been avoiding, yourself. You start to see how easily we confuse motion with meaning. We run from project to project, trend to trend, but the constant movement hides a deeper stagnation. We're afraid to stop, because stopping means asking questions we might not like the answers to. Questions like, why am I really doing this? What am I trying to prove? Who am I trying to impress? The truth, when it comes, doesn't arrive as thunder. It comes quietly, but it cuts deep. It whispers, you've been running from stillness. You've mistaken distraction for direction. And the hardest part of this realization isn't the guilt, it's the humility. The humility to admit that your busyness was often avoidance. That your noise was often fear disguised as productivity. But truth doesn't punish, it purifies. When you finally face it, it burns away what's false. And in that fire, something unbreakable begins to form: conviction. You realize that every trend, every external standard, every social script is temporary. But principles, they endure. Honesty, discipline, integrity, courage. These are the anchors that keep you steady in the storm. They're not fashionable, but they're eternal. The world will forget the influencer of the month, the viral post, the temporary genius, but it will never forget the one who built something rooted in truth. It's in this solitude that you begin to understand what innovation truly means. It's not about being different for the sake of being different. It's about being authentic in a world terrified of authenticity. Innovation begins when imitation ends. It's the natural consequence of honesty, the inevitable result of living from your essence instead of your ego. The problem is, truth demands sacrifice. It asks you to give up the comfort of conformity. It asks you to lose followers, to face misunderstanding, to risk being unseen. Because truth, by nature, separates. It distinguishes what's real from what's fake, what's essential from what's excess. That's why few choose it. But those who do, they become the architects of the future. There's a timeless verse from the Tao Te Ching, asterisk, when I let go of who I am, I become what I might be. Asterisk, that's the essence of this stage. You begin to let go of who you pretended to be, the person built for approval, and start becoming the person built for purpose. That shift isn't glamorous. It's internal, invisible, but it's where your life begins to gain weight, not in the eyes of others, but in the depth of your own being. Now you begin to understand, the truth doesn't always make life easier, it makes it real. And real is enough. When you start living from truth, you stop negotiating your principles for convenience. You stop seeking shortcuts. You stop chasing ease. Because you understand that anything built on falsehood will eventually collapse under its own weight. But what's built on truth endures. So, what does living this truth look like in a modern world addicted to performance? It looks like quiet integrity. Like doing the right thing when it's no longer rewarded. Like choosing depth over exposure. Like creating work that serves, not just sells. It's about bringing timeless values into a transient world. Here's the principle: build what will outlast you. Whether it's a business, an idea, a family, or a personal code, build it on truth, not trend. Because truth is the only foundation that doesn't decay. The crowd will change its opinion tomorrow, but truth doesn't shift. And when you stand on it, you become immovable. That doesn't mean arrogance, it means clarity. It means knowing who you are and what you stand for, even when the world spins faster around you. It means being grounded in something beyond algorithms and applause. It means living by conviction, not reaction. You begin to notice how your energy changes when you live this way. You no longer feel desperate for validation, because your validation comes from alignment. You no longer fear missing out, because you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You no longer measure yourself by comparison, because your worth is rooted in purpose, not popularity. And in that alignment, you find freedom. Not the fleeting kind that comes from escape, but the deep kind that comes from mastery. Mastery of your mind, your emotions, your time, your voice. You become a quiet force in a noisy world, calm, steady, and unshakable. People will sense it. They'll call it confidence, but it's not. It's clarity. It's peace earned through struggle. It's the serenity that comes from no longer living in conflict with yourself. Back then, you followed trends because you feared irrelevance. Now, you build change because you've learned what's real. You've learned that relevance fades, but integrity echoes. You've learned that truth might cost you comfort, but it gives you power. The kind of power that can't be taken, only built. So, build from truth. Build with honesty. Build with intention. Every choice you make is either aligning you with truth or pulling you away from it. Choose alignment. And as you do, you'll find that the truth no longer feels heavy. It feels like home. Because when you live by truth, you no longer chase meaning. You embody it. You no longer search for purpose. You become it. That's where the next transformation begins. When truth turns into action. When conviction becomes construction. When you stop thinking about what could be, and start building what will be. Now comes the turning point, where truth stops being an idea and becomes a structure, where conviction hardens into creation. You've spent time in silence, in discomfort, in awakening. You've seen through illusion and reclaimed your voice. Now it's time to build, to transform everything you've learned into something tangible, something that breathes and moves in the real world. This is where following finally dies, and authorship begins. Creation is no longer about imitation, it's about alignment. You're no longer driven by the question, "What's everyone doing?" but by the question, "What must be done?" The shift is subtle but profound, from reacting to reality, to shaping it. When you start building, you're declaring something powerful, that your life will no longer be defined by consumption, but by contribution. You stop waiting for the world to inspire you and start realizing that the world is waiting for you to inspire it. That's the moment you step into leadership, not of others, but of yourself. This is where strength takes form. Not the strength of ego, but the strength of endurance. Building requires patience, resilience, and faith in unseen progress. The builder doesn't chase attention. He lays bricks in silence, day after day, trusting that the structure will reveal itself in time. You don't need applause for every layer. You need consistency. You don't need followers. You need focus. There's a principle from Marcus Aurelius. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. The same applies here. Waste no more time talking about change. Build it. Bring your principles into practice. Create systems, habits, and structures that reflect who you've become. Discipline is how belief becomes visible. When you build, you start realizing that innovation isn't about predicting the future, it's about preparing for it. You don't follow trends, you anticipate needs. You don't wait for permission, you design your own path. Builders see possibility where others see problems. They don't chase change, they create it. And here's the paradox. Creation will test your truth. Every project, every endeavor will expose the weak parts of your conviction. The moment you try to bring your principles into practice, resistance will meet you. Doubt will whisper, "Who are you to lead? What if you fail?" But the builder knows that failure isn't the enemy, stagnation is. Progress isn't perfection, it's persistence. In this stage, you'll learn that purpose is built through repetition, through discipline, through the quiet grind of showing up when motivation dies. It's in these moments that your foundation is tested. Every brick of effort, every moment of resistance overcome, becomes part of your architecture. And slowly, you realize that the real structure you're building isn't outside of you, it's inside. That's what separates builders from followers. Followers wait for ideal conditions. Builders create regardless of conditions. They don't wait for certainty, they move with faith. They don't need clarity to act, they act to create clarity. They understand that direction reveals itself through movement, not waiting. Building change in the modern world means mastering two paradoxes: to be visionary but grounded, to be adaptable but unwavering in principle. You must hold both, the flexibility to evolve with time, and the stability to stay rooted in truth. The world shifts quickly, but your values must not. So here's the principle for this stage. Creation is the ultimate form of clarity. When you build something, a skill, a system, a message, a legacy, it sharpens your mind and solidifies your purpose. It transforms vague ideals into tangible proof. It shows you who you are, not through words, but through work. The discipline of building trains you to act even when the outcome is uncertain. It teaches you patience, the kind that's not passive but active, filled with intention. You begin to love the process more than the result, because the process is where transformation happens. And something else occurs. When you start building from authenticity, people notice. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it. Your work carries weight, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Authentic creation has gravity. It pulls others into alignment, not through persuasion, but through presence. You become a quiet leader, not by design, but by integrity. Building change doesn't mean creating empires. It means creating impact. It could be a single message, a movement, a mindset. What matters is not scale, but sincerity. When what you build comes from truth, even the smallest act can ripple through generations. And yes, the path of a builder is lonely at times. You'll be misunderstood. You'll outgrow people who prefer imitation. You'll be questioned, doubted, resisted. But that's how you know you're no longer following, you're forming. The resistance is proof of movement. Don't run from it. Let it refine you. Let the criticism strengthen your conviction. Let the solitude fortify your vision. Because builders don't escape the storm, they learn to build in it. They don't hide from uncertainty, they create structure within it. The world rewards noise in the short term, but it remembers builders in the long term. Followers chase what's next. Builders define what's next. And the moment you realize this, you stop craving momentum and start mastering direction. So, build. Build change with your words, your craft, your actions, your discipline. Build something that doesn't depend on applause to stand. Build something that will outlive the algorithm. Because when you do, you'll discover that the true reward of creation isn't recognition. It's becoming the kind of person capable of creating. Back then, you followed trends because it was easier to mimic than to manifest. But now, you build change, patiently, quietly, intentionally. You're no longer reacting to the world, you're rebuilding it. And in that act of building, something profound happens. You begin to experience peace, not the peace of comfort, but the peace of purpose. The kind that whispers, "This is what I was made to do." That peace is the doorway to the final stage, reflection, where the builder looks back, not to regret the past, but to honor the journey. Where creation turns into wisdom, and wisdom becomes legacy. Reflection, the quiet after creation, the peace that comes not from stopping, but from understanding. You've walked through the noise, through imitation, through solitude, through truth, and through the discipline of building. Now you stand at the summit of your own evolution, not to shout, not to boast, but to breathe. To look back and see what was once chaos now shaped into meaning. Back then, you followed trends. You let the world dictate your rhythm. Every decision was a response to something external, to noise, to expectation, to fear. But now, you move differently. You act from clarity, not reaction. You've learned that the world doesn't slow down for anyone, but peace comes to those who stop needing it to. Reflection is the final test of transformation. Because the danger after creation is ego, the illusion that you built everything alone. But wisdom whispers otherwise. You built because you surrendered. You aligned yourself with truth, with discipline, with a purpose larger than your pride. You stopped following others, yes, but more importantly, you stopped following the version of yourself that was ruled by fear. That was the real victory. Now, as you reflect, you begin to see that every stage had a purpose. The imitation taught you humility. The silence taught you patience. The discomfort taught you strength. The truth taught you direction. The building taught you discipline. Each layer shaped the architecture of who you are now. You didn't skip any steps. You grew through each one. And that's why the foundation holds. The modern world worships progress, but rarely pauses for reflection. We chase the next milestone so fast we forget to honor what's already been built. But reflection is what turns achievement into understanding. Without it, success becomes another form of noise. Reflection is where you digest the journey, where lessons become principles, and principles become legacy. There's a line from the poet Rumi, asterisk, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Asterisk reflection lets you see the light in the places that once hurt. It allows you to thank the discomfort that pushed you to evolve. You begin to see that what once felt like loss was actually release. What once felt like chaos was actually construction. Every failure, every silence, every lonely night, it was all part of the architecture. And now, as you look around, you realize, you no longer need to prove yourself. You no longer chase relevance. You've outgrown the desire to be seen, because you've found peace in being known. by yourself. That's what freedom feels like. Quiet, grounded, whole. Reflection also carries responsibility. Because now that you've built change within yourself, the next step is to share it. Not through preaching, but through presence. Through how you live, how you speak, how you serve. The world doesn't need another trend, it needs examples of stability. Of people who walk with truth while others run with noise. You become that example not by trying to lead, but by living fully aligned. This is where legacy begins, not in monuments, but in momentum that outlives you. The ideas you nurture, the people you lift, the changes you inspire through integrity, that's legacy. You don't build it consciously, it emerges naturally when you live with clarity and courage. The greatest legacy is not what you build, but who you become while building it. And so, you begin to reflect on the meaning of change itself. Change is not chaos, it's continuity. It's life renewing itself through you. The person you were needed to follow, so the person you are could learn to lead. The pain you felt was necessary pressure. Pressure that shaped your form, that strengthened your character. You realize now that every version of yourself was essential. Even the one who followed trends had a purpose. They showed you who you were not. As you sit in reflection, something powerful settles in, stillness without stagnation. You've learned to move without rushing, to build without chasing, to grow without losing yourself. This is the state of mastery, calm action. You are no longer the follower, nor the builder reacting to challenge. You've become the architect of your own rhythm. So here's the final principle. Peace is not found after change, it's found through it. True peace isn't the absence of motion, it's the harmony of motion and purpose. It's when you can act without anxiety, create without competition, live without pretending. It's when every step you take aligns with who you've chosen to be. That's the destination of this journey. Not fame, not validation, not even success, but alignment. To live in such a way that your thoughts, words, and actions all point in the same direction. To be integrated, whole, intentional. That's real power. When you reach this place, you stop fearing change. You start seeing it as your partner, not your enemy. You don't just adapt, you thrive. You build with the rhythm of time, not against it. You become a creator in harmony with the unfolding of life itself. So pause, breathe, and look back, not with regret, but with reverence. Every mistake was a teacher. Every silence was a sanctuary. Every struggle was a forge. You didn't lose time following trends, you learned why you must never do it again. Now you build change, not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of love. Love for growth. Love for truth. Love for the potential still waiting inside you. Back then, you followed trends. Now, you build change. And in that transformation lies the entire story of becoming. Of turning noise into wisdom, imitation into innovation, and fear into peace. You no longer move with the world, you move within it, anchored, aware, and awake. That's where the journey ends, and begins again.